I'll be completely honest. Dave Chappelle and Aaron McGruber were incredibly influential in my development and my understanding of like black culture in America, because I didn't grow up in America. I grew up in Turkey. So that was my only insight into the disenfranchisement or marginalization of African Americans. And it's not the greatest educator, but for me it was profoundly influential in the sense that I learned a lot of, like, I developed a lot of my perspective by using that as a launching pad, like using that as a platform to dive deeper into these sorts of issues. So I think that comedy is profoundly important in that sense, especially when educating people about the marginalized identities and the struggles they go through. But having said that, it obviously can, the person who's communicating this message can, after a significant amount of capital or after a significant amount of time has passed, can be a little out of touch.
That's when you get 60-70% of the buying community now is a white community.
After 700,000 is all white people. After your scan passes 700,000 is all white people, and he's well past 700,000. So the white people want to hear that killing evidence. They want to hear about that.
Because you know it's just a bunch of white people in safari outfits who want to look at minorities through bulletproof glass. Oh, Harold, ever since I heard that NWA song, I've always wanted to see Watts.
It's not the greatest educator, but for me it was profoundly influential.
I was on the Daytona Strip when I saw this white guy in his SUV blasting Fabulous's Keeping It Gangsta. How you doing, man? Pretty good. All right. Hey, listen, man. Where you from? I'm from Columbus, Ohio. We're born and raised? Yeah. How long you been listening to hip hop, man? 7, 8 years. I mean, since it started coming out in 91, 92.
I said, stop claiming New York started this shit. There's no need, brethren. Yeah. Pull your fucking head in and show some respect to the OG veterans. It's a fact that hip-hop records did not exist until OG stepped in and released the first ever rap song called The Nosebleed Section.
Ever since then, what is it that draws you to hip-hop? You know what I mean?
What draws me to hip-hop?
Yeah.
Just the pure emotion in the beats. I mean, I love the beats. I love every lyric that they spit. I mean, everything about it is just it's my style. I mean, you guys, colored people, can say that it's their music, but I mean, I can get down to it just as much as they can.
Who are you, man? Did you just say colored people? Are you
I don't know what term do you want me to use? I'm trying to be. I'm not a racist at all. That's why I feel like I can come down here and just roll, and I can have no problems. No one's gonna try to do anything at me. I mean, I'm just trying to have a good time down here.
I hear you, man.
It is something that's as put on as baggy jeans for white boys. It is as put on as a fitted baseball cap and a do-rag. That's all they get. That's all they're gonna be able to get and identify with. And I know you white boys. I seen you. You know, you are the guys who come up to me and ask me why I am the way I am. And if you don't understand, ain't no way I can tell you. There's no way I can tell you. It comes with this.
You know, I've never been to the hood. I've never been to a ghetto. I grew up in, upper middle class, basically white suburbia. We had a very small minority in our town, and that was it. And to listen to stuff like that is a way of us to see almost a different culture, well, a completely different culture. It's something that most of us have never had the opportunity to experience. I've never had to worry about drive-by shootings, and the stuff in the music, it appeals to our sense of learning about other cultures and wanting to know more about something that we'll never probably experience.
Does it reinforce stereotypes?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. It does.
Especially if they talk about growing up poor and never having all this money, and then they come on MTV or VH1 with their large chains and their nice cars, and they sing a song about busting caps in people. Their large chains and their nice cars.
The person who's communicating this message can, after a significant amount of capital, their
large chains and their nice cars.
A significant amount of capital can be a little out of touch.
I agree with you about Dave Chappelle.
But Dave Chappelle was decapitated in front of us.
And until we deal with that, until we deal with the fact that a devout Muslim who doesn't eat bacon was accused of being a crackhead, until we establish the fact that they said that he went to Africa to smoke cocaine when we know they don't have running water and food over there, when they don't have paved roads over there. You saying he flew past Chicago and Miami and LA and New York and Detroit. You saying he went past Cleveland and Fort Pierce, Florida, and he went past Okeechobee and Oakland. You say he went to another country where they're not eating?
Right.
You talking about somebody who has a wife and children, 5 children, and lives on a farm, doesn't live here in Hollywood. You saying you convinced people that person was an insane crackhead? Wow. And he hasn't been on movies and TV for 8 years? Is that correct? Wow. Okay, then don't tell me about what you want to tell me about. I just watched you decapitate the king in front of me. And then act like he's supposed to catch up and be a regular comedian like everybody else. But no.
He didn't go for that.
That's not how it went. He was out there with us for 20 years. They called him Pilot Boy because he had 19 pilots in Hollywood and everybody passed on him and said his show wasn't worth it.
What do you think of
Then when he made $500 million, they said even though his contract said he should get half of it, they said he made too much for the contract to be valid, so we'll offer you 10% of what you made. You mean he made $500 million and they offered him 50? Yes. And he said, what do you think my fans are gonna say when they find out you offered me 10% of what I made you? And they said, your fans will believe that you're a crazy crackhead by the time you get home. And my nigga got on the flight in LA, and by the time he got to Ohio, it was so. And 8 years later, he hasn't been in a movie and or television. Is just now trying to do his real comeback at Radio City Music Hall. It bees like that sometimes. So now you can be the fake king or you can be the real king, but heavy is the head.
A significant amount of capital can be a little out of touch.
So, for instance, now we have radicals very involved in organizations that are trying to stop the violence. Stop the violence meaning not the violence going on in Afghanistan, but stop the violence that's happening in the streets, the violence that happens among the working class. So they say stop the violence. And then what are the programs? I can agree with that. We need to stop that violence. What are the programs that are usually put forward by these nonprofits, some of them staffed with radicals that are versed in some sort of class analysis? Are they putting forward a class line? Well, what they offer up often is we should teach people how to speak to each other nicer. We should have meetings with people and have kids play chess, because they play chess or they have a place to play basketball, which both are things that I think we should all be able to play chess and play basketball and watch movies and all of those things. I think that's part of life. But the idea is that if you do that, then they'll stop being violent. Why would that stop them from being violent? Why? Because the thing that's being put out by many of these organizations is that the violence is an outgrowth of an inferior moral code. The violence is an outgrowth of bad parenting. There's not a father in the house. The violence is an outgrowth of people being too macho, right? And there's whole theories that are put forward about this to back it up, because now you've got a job in it. You better like make a good argument for it. And it confuses a lot of people. However, a class line about it will tell you that capitalism must have unemployment in order to work. If there was full unemployment under capitalism, then workers could demand whatever wage they wanted without even going on strike. Because the boss couldn't say, you're fired, I'm going to replace you. There's nobody to replace you. It's full employment. So so unemployment is necessary to keep wages low. Wall Street Journal, all those financial newspapers will start worrying out loud when unemployment starts going down low. So what happens when you're unemployed? Most likely unemployed people want to eat too. So they're going to figure out a way to eat. And that means, in the United States, that means illegal business. And as we know, all business regulates itself. How does it regulate itself? All business regulates itself through violence. If it's legal business, it regulates itself through violence. That violent force is called the police. You can't walk out of a grocery store pushing a cart of groceries and not paying, because you're going to be met with that violent force. Now, maybe that violent force will meet you and they won't beat you down. Depending on what you look like, what their mood is, what they ate for breakfast, you may not get roughed up. But at the very least, even if they kiss you on the forehead, they're either taking you to jail, they're going to take you to jail, but they're definitely bringing those groceries back to the store. So that's the violent force that's needed for businesses to exist. Right? That's the violent force that's necessary. Now, illegal business, they don't have it so easy. How do they regulate themselves? They do it themselves, right? Because they can't go to court and say, Your Honor, I bought a whole key of cocaine from him, and clearly it was mixed with 85% baking soda. I demand restitution. You can't do that. You can't go to the zoning commission and say, we gotta change these permits because this place should be zoned just for 2 dope dealers on this corner, and clearly 5 is too many, and I'd like to see what I can do about that. It's regulated through violence. It's regulated through violence, and you know, whatever we do to survive creates culture.
A song about busting caps in people.
You know, if you have a fishing village, there's going to be a bunch of fishing songs. Right? And you know, however, you know, nonprofits and cultural pundits will tell you that maybe if you went to a fishing village and made songs about planting seeds, that maybe it would change from a fishing village to an agricultural community. But no, fishing villages create fishing songs, not the other way around. So a culture is developed out of what we do to survive. And you know what? Revolutionaries know this. It's just not in fashion to say it. And it's terrible because it's a really easy thing to talk about. Like, there's so many interviews where, you know, public leaders are like, what are we going to do about the violence in our communities? And if I'm ever there, I say, hey, how about we support organizing the fast food workers and getting $16 an hour? And like, you know, then there's silence. Like, but that doesn't mean funding the police. Right? So all of these, you know, we've had a number of ex-revolutionaries in Oakland that are in the city council or a mayor. We had, you know, one of the first people that declared themselves a socialist in Congress, Ron Dellums, whose grandfather was one of the organizers of the first black union in the United States, the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters. Ron Dellums declared himself a socialist. He came back and was the mayor of Oakland, and that was his answer too. It was more police, but maybe more polite police. Right? So we get into these crazy, you know, sidetrack arguments.
Contrapoints sitting on a couch in lingerie rambling about incels.
Based on our unwillingness to work around organizing labor in a radical way, right? A lot of the answers, even beyond making a revolution, just changing things a little bit, come with having that part organized. You know, I talk about the $16 an hour for fast food workers. Anybody that I know that has sold dope clearly makes less than $12 an hour and would gladly take a job that paid that much instead of doing that, right? Imagine if the campaign to get rid of a racist cop could call on the local industry to shut down until that cop was fired. It'd be much better than having people picketing around in a circle in front of the police station. Because what happens is the community says, that's never going to work. And unfortunately, they're right. Like, I've been involved in many police brutality campaigns. And unless we have a base of power to shut things down, what's going to happen is what's happened in every one of them that I've been in. Even when there's video of a cop having someone laid on the ground and shooting them in the back. That's the worst that happened, and because it was on video and all over YouTube, the cop got 10 months in jail, and that was it, right? And that's the most success we've ever had. All the other ones, the cop gets fired, quote unquote, but what that means is moved to another precinct, another city, and where he gets pats on the back because he's, in their eyes, a badass, and he gets a raise. So the point is this. we spend a lot of time, and it's different when the community is activated around it, then we need to go and we need to support that community. But often, we're creating these campaigns, we're sparking off these campaigns and spending a lot of energy, and that's not where everybody's at. So where is everybody at? Obviously, we know everybody is at the place of trying to figure out how to pay the rent, trying to figure out how to put food on the table. One way we can know this is just by talking to people. The other way we can know this is through popular culture. A lot of people complain, especially folks on the left, and maybe, and I know why. I see why a lot of people complain about the songs that people listen to in hip hop. Jay-Z raps about having all this money, Kanye. And there's a big question there. Why do people that can barely pay their rent want to listen to this stuff? Do they think that they might have this stuff at some point? Sometimes. But what they really are thinking is, that sounds like freedom to me. That's somebody that doesn't have to that doesn't have to worry about paying rent, doesn't have to worry about being evicted, doesn't have to worry about, where their kids are gonna sleep, doesn't have to worry about whether they gotta do something that might land them in jail.
A significant amount of capital.
So that's, for a lot of people, the only image of freedom that they're seeing. Why? Because radicals are nowhere around. Radicals aren't involved in the things that they're dealing with. And radicals aren't making it clear that what we're talking about is redistributing that wealth. And we're not only talking about redistributing all the wealth later on, decades from now when the revolution happens. We're talking about methods of collectively redistributing some of that wealth right now. But no, fishing villages create fishing songs, not the other way around.
It's not the greatest educator, but for me it was profoundly influential in the sense that I learned a lot of, I developed a lot of my perspective by using that as a launching pad, using that as a platform to dive deeper into these sorts of issues.
It's actually, I'm just sort of embarrassed for him, watching him. Obviously has it, doesn't really have it. Obviously has it, doesn't really have it.
If you want to talk about the deep discomfort of the arts, dive in. So,